Florida is often associated with the glittering skyline of Miami or the magical world of Disney, but beyond its polished tourist map lies a very different reality. Hidden behind the thick wetlands of the Everglades and vast stretches of sugarcane fields are communities struggling with geographic isolation, economic decline, and troubling crime rates. These towns are not just small dots on the map, they are remnants of fading industrial glory or places trapped in cycles of systemic poverty. From shrinking populations to aging infrastructure left to decay, this list explores 15 of the most struggling small and remote towns in Florida today. First, let's travel along the edge of the massive Lake Okeechobee, but do not expect luxury resorts here. Pahokee, the town sitting right beside it, carries a strangely quiet and worn-down atmosphere. Its name comes from the Seminole language, meaning grassy waters, reflecting its origins as a once thriving sugarcane farming hub. Today, however, that prosperity feels like a distant memory for the younger generation growing up here. According to recent data, the poverty rate in Pahokee exceeds 35%, making it one of the poorest towns in the entire United States. Driving down its main road reveals rows of boarded-up shops, broken windows, and sun-faded billboards bleached by the relentless Florida heat. Geographically, it is deeply isolated. It takes more than an hour just to reach downtown West Palm Beach. That isolation limits access to quality jobs, forcing many residents to depend on seasonal sugar industry work that pays very little. Pahokee is not just a small town, it has become a portrait of stagnation, a place where time seems frozen since the agricultural economy began collapsing decades ago. Just a few minutes south of Pahokee sits Belle Glade, a town that proudly carries the slogan, "Her soil is her fortune." Unfortunately, the rich black soil here no longer translates into prosperity for its residents. Belle Glade consistently appears on lists of the most dangerous towns in Florida. Violent crime rates here are often 3 to 4 times higher than the state average. The shift from prosperity to hardship is striking. In the past, Belle Glade was a dynamic center for migrant labor tied to the sugarcane industry. But as agricultural mechanization replaced manual labor, thousands of jobs disappeared. Today, the town is filled with deteriorating housing complexes and limited access to adequate healthcare facilities. The social challenges are complex: chronic unemployment, limited educational opportunities, and few pathways out. For many residents who lack the resources to relocate to Florida's wealthier coastal areas, the cycle becomes extremely difficult to break. Meanwhile, Florida City technically serves as the gateway to the exotic Florida Keys, making it a place thousands of tourists pass through every day. But for the people who live there, the city often feels like a place with an uncertain future. It has one of the lowest safety indexes in the region. Much of Florida City is lined with cheap roadside motels that frequently become hubs for illegal activity and drug trafficking. Despite its strategic location as a major transit point, the local economy has struggled to grow. Per capita income here sits far below Florida's basic living standards. Ironically, while property prices in Miami, just about 45 minutes to the north, continue to skyrocket, Florida City remains stuck with aging infrastructure and empty lots scattered with trash and neglect. Moving farther north, we arrive in Lake City. Geographically, the town sits at a crucial intersection where Interstate 75 meets Interstate 10. In theory, this position should have brought logistical prosperity and economic opportunity. In reality, however, Lake City has been struggling with serious public safety challenges. By 2025, data showed a significant rise in property theft and violent assaults. There was a time when Lake City was known for its beautiful natural springs, making it a popular stop for travelers looking for rest and relaxation. Today, however, the downtown area appears worn and tired. Many old brick buildings that should stand as historic landmarks have instead fallen into neglect. Even more troubling is the opioid crisis, which has hit this community particularly hard, placing a heavy burden on local emergency services and social support systems. Next, deep inside Collier County, Immokalee feels like a completely different world from the luxury of Naples, even though both exist within the same county. The town depends almost entirely on agriculture, especially tomato and citrus farming. A large portion of the population consists of migrant workers who live in crowded trailers or rental homes that are often in extremely poor condition. The central issues in Immokalee are exploitation and isolation. Access to public transportation is almost non-existent, and healthcare services remain very limited for those without insurance. Although several organizations have worked to improve labor conditions, the city's infrastructure remains far behind. Streets without sidewalks, poor drainage during the rainy season, and a lack of safe public spaces make Immokalee feel almost like a developing world settlement. Yet it sits in the middle of one of the wealthiest states in the United States. A similar story can be found in Palatka. During the 19th century, it was one of the busiest river transportation hubs in Florida. Steamboats regularly docked here, carrying tourists and goods along the St. Johns River. But once railroads took over and major highways were built farther inland, Palatka gradually lost its importance. Today, Palatka struggles with a population that is both aging and shrinking. Its historic downtown holds enormous tourism potential, yet the lack of investment has allowed many of those beautiful buildings to slowly deteriorate. Poverty rates remain relatively high, and the manufacturing sector that once supported the local economy has largely closed down or moved elsewhere. The quiet streets during normal business hours paint a clear picture of a town that is slowly losing the energy that once sustained it. If you go looking for the childhood home of music legend Ray Charles, you will find it in Greenville. But aside from a bronze statue honoring the musician, there is not much else to see. Greenville is a tiny town in Madison County that has fallen into deep decline. With a population of only a few hundred residents, the town has nearly lost most of its essential services. Many local businesses closed long ago, leaving behind empty buildings with peeling paint and boarded windows. There is no movie theater, no shopping center, and even a large grocery store is difficult to find. Young people who graduate from school here often leave almost immediately and rarely return, leaving behind an aging population that struggles with medical facilities located many miles away. If this trend of depopulation continues without intervention, Greenville may eventually drift toward becoming a ghost town. Meanwhile, White Springs stands as a classic example of a boomtown that ended in tragedy. During the Victorian era, thousands of visitors traveled here to soak in sulfur springs believed to have healing properties. Grand hotels and elegant colonial-style homes were built to accommodate wealthy travelers and social elites. Over time, however, the springs began to dry up due to heavy groundwater use by nearby phosphate mining operations. Without its main attraction, the local economy collapsed. The once famous bathhouses that defined the town are now little more than crumbling concrete ruins covered in moss and graffiti. The town itself feels quiet, but that silence carries an unsettling weight, reflecting a slow and inevitable economic decline. Returning to the Lake Okeechobee region, we find South Bay, often called the southernmost city on Lake Okeechobee. Unfortunately, that title has not brought much prosperity. Instead, the town has one of the lowest median incomes in Florida. Visually, South Bay is dominated by public housing complexes and dry, sparsely developed streets. Access to higher education or professional employment requires traveling long distances, something many residents simply cannot afford due to fuel costs and transportation barriers. The lack of economic diversity makes the city extremely vulnerable to fluctuations in agricultural commodity prices. If harvests fail or crop prices drop, the entire community feels the impact immediately. The social conditions in South Bay reflect the systemic inequality often faced by small inland communities across Florida. In addition, there is Aripeka, a place that offers a glimpse of what many would call the real Florida, with dense mangrove forests and sprawling coastal wetlands. Even so, life in this small fishing village has become increasingly difficult in recent years. The main threat here is not crime, but nature itself. Sitting almost at sea level, the town is extremely vulnerable to rising sea levels and powerful tropical storms. Many of the historic wooden homes in the area have already been destroyed by repeated storms. At the same time, flood insurance policies have become so expensive that many homeowners simply cannot afford to rebuild. Local roads are frequently flooded by saltwater, accelerating damage to vehicles and buildings. Slowly but steadily, permanent residents have begun leaving Aripeka, turning parts of the village into clusters of empty houses waiting for the next major storm to erase what remains. Few places in Florida are as unique and as tragic as Opa-locka. The city was originally designed with a 1001 Nights theme, filled with buildings featuring domes and towers inspired by Moorish architecture. In the 1920s, it was an incredibly ambitious vision. Unfortunately, that dream eventually turned into a difficult social reality. For decades, Opa-locka has struggled with gang violence and systemic corruption within local government. Even though the city lies close to Miami, investment has often avoided the area because of its reputation for insecurity. Many of its historic buildings now look eerie, with cracked walls and neglected surroundings. Efforts to revitalize the city have repeatedly stalled, leaving Opa-locka caught between its remarkable architectural heritage and the harsh social challenges that continue to define everyday life there. Riviera Beach presents a striking paradox. On one hand, it hosts a busy port and sits near the upscale community of Singer Island. Yet just a few blocks inland, the scene changes dramatically. There, you can find some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in South Florida. The city's homicide rate per capita has often been shockingly high for a community of its size. The tension here is fueled by a sharp economic divide between the prosperous coastal tourism areas and the residential neighborhoods where many longtime residents live. Local schools frequently struggle with limited funding, while youth unemployment remains a persistent issue. Areas that once served as thriving centers for local businesses have, in many cases, become empty lots or clusters of liquor stores, creating a bleak atmosphere for the people who call this place home. Just a few miles from the Kennedy Space Center, where some of the world's most advanced technology is launched into space, sits the city of Cocoa. It is deeply ironic to see how the surrounding technological progress has not significantly improved the city's overall quality of life. The area continues to struggle with high property crime rates and a growing homelessness problem. Much of Cocoa's older business district appears tired and worn, with many buildings in need of major renovation. While efforts have been made to revive the Cocoa Village area as a tourist destination, the surrounding neighborhoods remain caught in persistent poverty. The gap between the high-tech space economy nearby and the city's largely low-wage service economy creates social instability that can be clearly felt in everyday life on the streets. Next is Sebring, a city famous for its international raceway. Yes, this is the place known for high-speed endurance racing, but that excitement only happens once a year. For the rest of the time, Sebring is a town struggling with the collapse of its citrus industry, which once served as the backbone of the local economy. The spread of citrus greening disease has devastated thousands of acres of orange groves around the region, triggering a domino effect that has weakened the entire economic structure. Many older shopping centers in Sebring now sit partially empty. Malls that were once full of activity now look like relics of a past era of consumer growth. With limited new job opportunities, much of the working-age population continues to decline, leaving behind a community that struggles to maintain the city's wide infrastructure. Its geographic isolation in the middle of the Florida Peninsula also slows the arrival of new industries that could replace the collapsing agricultural sector. Finally, there is Panama City, not the luxurious Panama City beach, but the older city nearby that still carries deep scars from Hurricane Michael several years ago. Although recovery efforts have been underway, many parts of the city still look like areas abandoned after a disaster zone. Damaged buildings can still be found throughout the city, and many businesses never reopened after the storm. The housing crisis here has become especially severe. Many residents were forced to move away as rent prices soared while the supply of livable homes dropped dramatically. The situation has been made worse by the loss of countless large trees that once gave the city its character, leaving behind a landscape that feels exposed, dry, and unusually hot. In the end, the conditions across these 15 towns reveal a clear reality. Florida's economic growth is far from evenly distributed. From the collapse of agricultural industries to the lasting impact of natural disasters, these places stand as evidence of communities left behind in the rush of modernization. Understanding the realities faced by towns like these is important, not to discredit them, but to reflect on the serious challenges of creating more balanced development and infrastructure for the future.